Well, hello everybody. It's John Johnson from NSF, and this is our December webinar. And we're going to be talking about how to communicate with senior management and not be ignored. This has been a fascinating webinar to put together. Not least, you've given me a fantastic motivation in that it's been one of the fastest booking webinars that we've ever done. And that tells me one thing, everybody. It tells me that communication with our peers, our line managers, and our senior managers has got room for improvement. So hopefully some of the hints and tips on this webinar would be useful to you. I'm just going to move through the slides onto slide 2 now. As you know, we are NSF. We are a GMP consultancy based in the UK and USA, and we have 3 streams of work that we do most frequently. This is specialist training, auditing and remediation, and consultancy, including both GMP, science and compliance-based consultancy, but also quality culture. Introduction to myself. I couldn't help but put this photograph of my personal best trout on this slide. I suppose that's a great example of me wanting to communicate something to you. It's nice to achieve something now and again, and that was my personal best. So you know something about me already. There's some information there on the slide, but let's really get to the key messages on slide 4. So why do you think this webinar was booked in such record time? It's clear that everything that's going on in the industry just now, everything that's going on in the media, everything that's going on in our private lives is at warp speed. And to try and keep up with all of these changes, these indicators and signals, has never been more difficult. There's more communication media, more methods of communication than ever before. But is that actually improving the way we communicate as human beings? I don't think so. And actually, the research seems to suggest that as well. So making sure that you're able to put over the key messages to your team, keep them on mission, help them understand the priorities, or sometimes effect change when change is needed quickly, has never been more difficult. And of course, one of the main reasons for strife and confusion and frustration, even manifesting itself in staff turnover in critical positions, communication is such a cause of problems when done inadequately or infrequently. So fundamentally, how can we try and do this better? How can we influence our colleagues to agree with our take, our proposals? How can we engage with our colleagues so that they engage in a way where they give part of themselves to our ideas and they actually provide recommendations and technical input into our ideas so that fundamentally as a community, as a team, we can actually all succeed together. Moving on to slide 5, I think it's fantastic you're here. It tells me that actually you are interested in changing your communication methods. And, you know, I always refer back to this great quote from Henry Ford. If you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you always got. So another key message here is that fundamentally your success in communication is going to be measured by the response you get. So if you're unhappy with the response that you're getting, you're working hard to communicate things, you don't seem to be getting much feedback, you don't seem to be getting much engagement, maybe you seem to be frustrating or upsetting people in the way that you're going about it, then the key message here is make a change. It obviously isn't working. So you have to think of different ways of communicating with the people around you. So really try and measure the success of your communication methods by the response you get, whether that's verbal, whether it's body language, or whether it's written responses. But the key thing here is be mindful of your style, and be mindful that your style may have to be different by necessity with different people in your organization. What goes well with somebody may not go well with somebody else. So be as flexible as you can. Just backtracking a little bit, I wanted to show this slide number 6, because at first glance, these beautiful cave paintings or petroglyphs from the Skeena Valley in British Columbia just look like wonderful pieces of art. And these petroglyphs have been studied for many years, and actually when you look at them carefully and you hear some of the stories behind them, you realize that actually there's a great message for us here in pharmaceuticals. Because one of the things that really acts as a barrier to communication is in fact our procedures. Isn't that amazing? So the policies, the procedures, the records, the logbooks that we put in place to set standards, to set instructions, and to record jobs actually add to the confusion, add to the frustration, to a degree where, in fact, let's be honest, in many cases, our staff do not reference those documents when they do a job because they're just too difficult, they're too complex, they're too detailed. But look how the First Nations of British Columbia actually got around this problem literally thousands of years ago. When you look at the photograph of the petroglyph in the top left, what you're looking at there is not just a piece of art, it's actually a procedure. It's a procedure for life. So in order to feed the tribe, the chief or the leader within the tribe actually wrote up a procedure in the cave and used it as a training method and as a trigger for his braves in order to give them the instructions to find food for the whole tribe. And when you look at this petroglyph really carefully, you can see that there are clear instructions on how to do a fairly complex hunt just with one photograph. I mean, isn't this just so interesting in that we could actually use more photographs, more flowcharts, more symbols in our batch records and batch instructions that would actually try and prevent human error and try and prevent divergence of standards and execution of work. So when you look at this photograph, you can see that in order to find the goat that's going to feed the tribe, the braves have to cross a valley that's full of dead trees. They have to climb a mountain, and at the top of the mountain they will find the goat. When they've found the goat, they climb down a ladder, they wash the goat's carcass in the waves of the river, and they take it and cook it on a fire. Now, that's a fairly complex instruction on how to find the food, but also what's really interesting here is there is a spiral in the top right of that photograph. And the spiral has 4 rings, and that tells the tribe that they need 4 goats per week in order to survive. So it also sets a standard and an effectiveness check for this procedure. Have a look at the petroglyph on the top right here as well. This is actually a bill of materials. It's an inventory for a hunt. And what this is showing is if you want to be able to drive 5 deer across a plain, you're going to need 2 horsemen and 3 dogs in that ratio. So in effect, it tells an instruction to the braves on how to drive that ratioed herd of deer across the plains. When you look at the totem pole on the bottom left here, it looks like a beautiful cedar carving, and indeed it is. But in fact, it's a lot more than that. You can see that this is an organisation chart, and it is also a statement of the vision, mission, and values of this family band. So the symbol of the cat at the top is the father. The next one down is the mother. At the feet of the mother and father are the 2 children, shown by the faces at the bottom. And the place of living and the mission, the place where they would stay and live, is in the mountain headwaters, depicted by the 2 wings. The values that they hold most dear, and the thing that they would cherish above everything, if you like, their mandatory, unalienable, high-value item, is the two salmon shown in the middle of the totem, because that is what feeds the tribe. The fourth picture there just shows a meeting. You probably recognize this type of meeting in your own organization. But you can see here that everybody is listening face to face, looking at each other, bringing something to the party in the middle of the table, and wanting to bring something and take something of value. And that's a key message for all communication. Everyone must win. Everyone must take something away that's going to help them do their job better. So you can see that communication has been refined and improved and symbolized for thousands and thousands of years. However, what is it like in the 21st century? Well, it's got a lot more complex, isn't it? There's a huge number of different communication methods now. And actually, let's be honest, most of us, even some of the old guys that we work with, love at least one of these because they're visual, they're immediate, they're snappy, they're attractive. They're almost habit-forming because they give you some immediate feedback. You know immediately whether somebody has read your message, liked your message, is in accordance with you or not in accordance with you. But of course, all of these things are squeezing our time. Time is no longer our friend. We are the want it now and the want it all generation, and trying to make sure that we use all of these methods to best effect is going to be an increasing challenge for us. Now think about what it must be like as an airline pilot or maybe a technician working in a nuclear plant. These people are going to be surrounded by a multitude of signs, signals, indicators, and noise. Lights blinking, sounds going off, levers to be pulled. And doesn't it feel a little bit like that as a senior manager in pharmaceuticals just now? Our global supply chains have got more complex. Our risks have become harder perhaps to understand or to codify. And we're bombarded every day with lots and lots of information. You can see on slide 10, even in the course of one working day, there will be literally thousands of signals, hundreds of questions that will come to mind. And you have to decide how you're going to apply your grey matter, your brain, to the right question at the right time, gather the right information, and try and make the right call with the best intentions and the right justifications. And of course then, on top of that, in pharmaceuticals and many other industries, you need to be able to record that decision in a way that can be justified some years after to your line manager, to your CEO or shareholders, or indeed the regulators. So we know from slide 10, we're bombarded with a variety of questions all the time. Looking at slide 11 then, so how do we actually get our message across? How do we actually make sure that what we want to happen does happen? Or what information do we need from someone else does come our way? Well, fundamentally, there's three key ways of doing this. The first one, and I know it's old-fashioned, everybody, it's communication. Two-way communication actually depends ideally on face-to-face. There is no substitute for seeing somebody's face, whether it's Skype or in person. There is no substitute for actually shaking hands, breaking bread together, comparing experiences, sharing perspectives, and then coming up with a consensus, ideally a shared way forward. And we work really hard to make sure that we keep a balance on our communication, getting out to visit clients face-to-face as much as possible. The second part of that, of course, is very obvious. We don't have time for long sessions anymore. Even our webinars at NSF maybe used to be 45 minutes to an hour, but we know time is tight. We know you need punchy, short information that's going to get to the point as quickly as possible. And we know that's the case as well in your verbal, your email, and your written communications. So having a good discipline of being able to produce an executive summary is absolutely essential. So if you want to engage in a conversation, you want to engage in a communication with somebody, there's a simple equation for this. The first thing is you need to gain attention, and then you need to provide a content that is going to add value to the person that you're speaking to. You need to keep it simple, keep it grounded, and make sure everybody understands right from the get-go what's in it for me, what's in it for you, and what's in it for us. Because ultimately, we're all here to improve the organization and give a return on investment to that organization. So when you look at the equation here on slide 13, what's actually most important? You know, we are GMP experts, most of us. We are GMP and pharmaceutical technical experts. And we love the content, don't we? We love the science. And the science sometimes can become very complex, lots of 4-letter acronyms, 3-letter acronyms, lots of jargon. But the problem with that is that when we talk to our senior managers, and certainly finance, production, supply chain, maybe development staff, we lose their attention. And it's very, very important for quality people to actually gain attention first. What happens when you don't get both? Well, you may have the best content in the world, you may have a fantastic message to give, but if nobody's listening, nobody's giving you attention, it doesn't matter at all. Equally, how annoying is it when you get people who continually crave that attention, sending you emails and SMSs and catching you in the corridor, and what they're telling you is actually of low value, low content, and not actually improving your workplace or your organization. So in effect, you need both, but certainly the first thing is to gain attention. So how do we do that? Well, timing is absolutely crucial, because there's no point in telling me something about what I need to do next Monday when I'm just about to leave and go home on a Friday night. Psychologically, I've already got in my car, I'm already driving home, I'm already planning my weekends with my friends and going fishing and walking the dog and going cycling. I'm not actually actively listening about next week. You have to time it correctly. And timing can make a massive difference on the level of engagement that you get with your co-communicator. The second key thing is the first 90 seconds. In that first 90 seconds, you need to know what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, and that person is going to be receptive to your information. So try and get over to them the problem. Summarize the problem in one sentence, ideally. Summarize the consequences of doing nothing. Summarize the solutions that you've considered and that you would recommend. And it's really, really recommended if you can also say how you will follow up and verify that your solution will be effective and actually work for the long term. And a key tip here for you is that at the end of that 90 seconds, finish with a question. Why? Why would you finish with a question? You will actually check that they've listened and that you'll check that they're engaging in a two-way communication. So at the end of that 90 seconds, it's nice to be able to say, can I get your agreement on this? Is there anything I need to do in order to make this happen? Can I gain your approval? Or I need your help. What can you do to help me? Because while doing that, you're actually checking they've listened and you're asking for their input, and their brain then switches on into another level of active mode. Remember, everybody, of course, that questions control conversations. You may have the answer, but you really want to get a shared answer that comes from intelligent questioning. So what about the content of the communication? Well, in this life where we've got so many different signals and indicators and influences on us, we need to know fairly quickly in that communication what's in it for me. Really, in this day and age, most of us are switched off by jargons. We're switched off by acronyms and sloganeering. We just see that these days as white noise. We want people to get to the point quickly, clearly, precisely, ideally with some data behind it, and bring a clear definition of what that communication is about. But ultimately, that communication has to make a difference. If it doesn't make a difference, it's actually irrelevant, it's white noise, and you lose both reputation and the time in front of your senior manager. The problem we have, of course, shown on slide 16, is that often we don't speak a language the whole company can understand. You know, how many times do we hear that QA, production, development, QC are talking in a meeting but not listening to each other or not actually understanding where each other is coming from? One of the reasons for that is that they don't all speak the same language. And actually one of the key ways of doing this is to actually speak in terms of money, because everybody understands money. It is the international language. So no one likes wasting it either. Nobody really wants to see waste in their organization or in their personal life. So making sure that your conversation centers on the return on investment is absolutely crucial. So what are your senior managers actually prioritizing in their life? How can you actually make their life better? And how can you help them? How can you make your ideas and your suggestions make a difference to them and therefore benefit the organization and yourself? Well, that's actually very easy, because the senior managers, they are driven by 4 key parameters. The first one is any organization has to be innovative, it has to be creative, and it has to lead to new products or services. So if you're talking about a new service, a new process that's going to deliver new products, maybe new product introduction into your facility, that's immediately going to gain attention and interest. If you're going to be talking about growth in sales value or volume, that's going to gather interest. If you're going to be talking about reducing the amount of time taken to provide that goods or service, or minimizing cost, suddenly your conversation is bringing a value that the senior manager can immediately see. And let's be honest, everybody, particularly those in quality, perhaps, or even health and safety, compliance, fear, and risk aversion rarely actually engage anyone for long. A fear agenda doesn't actually engage anyone for any amount of time. So always try and link it back to either new products and services, to growth in sales, reducing time, or removing unnecessary cost. And actually, we have to remember the cost of non-compliance. So when non-compliance is a risk, perhaps a warning letter or a field alert or an unnecessary complaint or a deviation or an out-of-specification result which is leading to a delay in release, they're all going to provide unnecessary cost to your organization. So if you're going to help your senior manager, help them understand the requirements in EU GMP Volume 4, Chapters 1 and 3. Help them understand what they're actually legally required to do and how they should be supporting the group. You know, one of my line managers in the past once said to me, "John, I know your life does seem difficult and complex and this job is very challenging, but actually, John, you only have 2 jobs." And I thought, that sounds great. 2 jobs, that sounds easy. But actually, the 2 jobs he described to me were actually a little more complex. They were to make sure that I identify any risks to the organization and make him aware of them. And the second job was to mitigate risk. That's by reducing the severity of the consequences, the frequency of it occurring, or improve the visibility and detectability of it when it occurs. And he just said to me each time, "What have you found? How are you reducing risk?" And a great reference to ICHQ9 and our Techniques for Failure Investigation course really help in that conversation. Because ultimately, any senior manager wants to avoid disruption of the supply chain, minimize costs or unbudgeted spend, and wants to make sure that there is a legacy of patient safety and GMP compliance for the long term. So, when you study the most successful companies in the world, and especially those in pharmaceuticals, there are 6 key attributes that define those companies. And this is shown on the 6-fingered hand at the top right of slide number 20. So companies that are really successful walk the job. Their people walk the job, do the Gemba, go to the real place, do face-to-face communication, and really investigate and invest time at the shop floor where the problem actually occurred. They seek a deep understanding of all of the risks and concerns. They seek a deep understanding of how the future might be changing and what challenges are going to be occurring in the future. They are excellent at ICHQ9 risk management, absolutely critical. They use black box theory and error chains and various techniques to improve the analysis of the multiple root causes that lead to our unbudgeted or unplanned issues. They are expert at making sure human error is eliminated as far as possible by good design, good controls, and good monitors. They look at human error as an opportunity. They look at human error as a way of pressure testing the system and improving the system to help people's lives, actually to prevent them making human error in the first place. But fundamentally, the thumb on this hand is the big one. We have to be obsessive in knowing our job. We have to be obsessive in knowing the regulations, how to interpret them, how they're changing, and how to get the best out of our teams. And actually, what underpins all of those 6 fingers is communication. And being sure that you can do simple, straight communication that's linked to return on investment is absolutely crucial. And I can't actually underestimate how important simplification is. Let's go back to the petroglyphs. Let's go back to the totem pole. In that very brief cave painting or totem pole, a huge amount of information was able to be presented that we could use in a similar way with our policies, procedures, records, and logs. You know, how useful would it be to have more photographs, more exploded diagrams, more flow charts, more swim lane diagrams, more symbols, more highlighting, making sure that people can see the priorities, even making sure that the unalienable mandatory requirements are on the front page of every procedure. People don't read 20-page, 30-page, 40-page procedures anymore. They want to go straight to the key items. So why not put those key items in bold, in colour, on page 1? Because ultimately, we know that communication in part depends on our policies and procedures, and communication will definitely drive the true root causes of human error. So as you know, of course, NSF can help in a number of areas here with specialist coaching in the science, compliance and leadership that leads to better communication, better performance, better outcomes. And we've done a phenomenal number of projects in the last 3 years to help simplify the quality management system, because we know it's getting just too complex out there, really complex, and we want to be able to help you cut through the labyrinth of information and do what is right, what is high priority, and that's going to give the biggest return on investment. We have a number of free resources on slide 22 that I'd like to direct you to. We have some great content on YouTube, some very short, snappy 7-minute YouTube videos. We have 30-minute webinars, and we have 1 or 2-page white papers that really give you a dig in the ribs as to how to improve communication in your organization. So please look out for those. Then, of course, we have our free 2017 webinar program. And between Martin Lush and Mike Halliday and myself, we're going to be giving you some further support over the course of the year. And we hope that these webinars are proving to be useful to you. You know, they're short, they're punchy, and hopefully you're going to get something out of them. So that's communication. I hope that was useful to you. Thank you so much for your interest, and we'll make sure that this webinar is uploaded onto our website and made available to you straight away. Thank you very much indeed. Take care and enjoy the rest of 2016.